Welcome back to Football Fundits and to this very special episode because it's the Merseyside Derby preview. Fun fact, guys, the last time Everton beat Liverpool was on 17th October 2010. The game is on 17th October 2020. Good history finally changed its course. We have Bijon with us, first time on our show, a Liverpool fan, and Nidhi, a resident Liverpool fan who's been with us. Bijon, I'll start with you. Firstly, what do you think Klopp has done to fire up the squad after that 7-2 loss?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised you brought up the 7-2 loss because I thought it was something that we could have just moved on from very quickly. But no, it's one of these things that it's like the Watford loss that we had. That was just one of those things that you have to write off very quickly, right? And then even a few years ago when we went to Spurs and got smashed 5, it was just one of those things that is a wake up call. But realistically, we've been absolutely elite for 3 years, right? It's just something that the squad has been able to move on from very quickly. Klopp knows the triggers, obviously, has to figure out what to do. I think the only concern we might actually have is who the second centre-back will be, because there's been a lot of chopping in, well, between the two, between Gomez and Matip. I'm sure Nidhi can add to that. But I think a lot of people are talking about, what the high line is and whether that's under control or is it an issue. Adrian worries me, obviously. But it's something that it's a derby. We always show up for a derby. Having said that, I believe the last time United conceded 6, Liverpool conceded 7, something of that sort, and then Everton won the title. So let's just give them that little sentence because that's the best it's going to be for them.
Yeah, this has been the strongest start for Everton in what's been decades, right? Carlo Ancelotti, though, we expected this after the end of last season, that once he gets a whole preseason under his belt, he's going to turn this squad, the same set of players, into at least a challenging force. Nidhi, though, we spoke about, Bijon rightly said, Adrian and the centre-back pairing. Adrian, do you think he's going to be dropped? You have a young keeper on the bench, you can give a chance. And Matip is back finally after a couple of months out and, recurring injuries. Derby, though, coming in against the likes of Richarlison fit, Rodriguez fit, Calvert-Lewin in form. Too much for Matip?
Look, I don't think Matip will start this game, although I do think he'll feature at some point in the game. Let's hope it's, towards the end of the game when, it's just to shore the defense up and freshen it up. I don't think Matip will start. But it's basically going back to our previous conversation on Football Fundits itself. Joe Gomez has looked a bit suspect. I said he's out of form, and I still maintain that. I don't think, I think it was here only we discussed whether out of form or out of depth. I still think he's out of form. So I think Joe Gomez is going to start and Matip is going to feature later in the game. The keeper, though, there is no way Kelleher is going to start, right? It's just too much for him. It's a derby game. You don't want, your first derby game to be up against, a really fired up Everton team. Like, it's derby. It's a derby day, yes, of course. But bear in mind, this Everton team are flying right now. I'm sure they can't wait for this particular game. And you don't want to put in a young keeper in like that. And Klopp is not the kind of person who does that anyway. So I think Adrian it is, and let's just hope he has a slightly better day than what he did against Aston Villa.
Yeah, man, I think he'll have to, because I'm sort of looking at Everton right now, and as you said, they'd be dying to start this one. And he said, right, like for years, Everton, the Merseyside Derby, of course, it's been important, but they've gone away with nothing practically. This is the first time they'll be like, you know what, we can actually get something out there. They're probably going into this a lot better in terms of bookies, as they probably have over the last 10 years. Right? This is probably their best chance in whatever space of time. And also then sort of cement their run in, like, showing that this is not just a blip. Right, this is the only time. If they beat Liverpool now, people will start taking them seriously. So this is suddenly a lot more than just the Merseyside Derby for Everton, where it has been for Liverpool for the last few years. It's been like, okay, it's a Merseyside Derby, we want to win that for the fans, but then it's also 3 points towards the Premier League title. This could be a lot more for Everton, and it's the first Merseyside Derby for so many players. And I think one of the good things that came out from the last game when a couple of players for Everton were injured and Sigurdsson came out after the game, and like, for so many years, none of us and none of these players have had to push each other for those positions. But right now we have to. Right now there's this sudden battle between the players, and I think that's going to show on the pitch. And I think this is going to be one of the most interesting or fiery or equally matched Merseyside derbies that we might see for 10 years, as so as it might seem.
Yeah, Kern,
Totally agreed. Totally agreed.
Yeah, Kern, because they had IOB and Walcott as July. They had IOB and freaking Walcott, and now they've gone on to James Rodriguez. And you can already see the effect it's having on the squad. It is James' first Merseyside derby along with the likes of Alan and Dukure. They will be spurred on. So Bijon, let's move away from what happened now and let's focus on what might happen. How do you genuinely see Liverpool lining up? Because Mane is fit. He's no longer in isolation. Thiago is back, sorry. And even Matip most likely is fit to be considered, obviously. Are you feeling positive and you feel that 7-2 blip is no longer in the players' mind? They will come out and just smash Everton?
I don't know about smashing Everton, but the reason I'm saying that is more because I've been having this conversation with a bunch of people in terms of because of the schedule that you have, and now because of so many people returning, there's with the virus, without the virus, isolation, etc. You're going to see like the first half of the season or the first portion was really erratic, right? It's random for a lot of clubs in terms of what the lineups have been, what the squads are. Even if you look at just minute by minute what people are playing, it's very different. And now you suddenly have, for example, these internationals, which are so pointless, but it's just a lot of random minutes, a lot of random games. So lineup wise, I'm not really concerned about whether it's Matip or Gomez. Would I prefer Matip? Only because I agree with Nidhi to say that Gomez is out of form, and I think people just gloss over the fact that he's 22, 23, or even if he's 23 and that's technically seasoned, he's only had 2 full seasons that are injury free, right? And he was part of a defense that when he came back and he took over from Matip, he was absolutely elite with Van Dijk. And because we give so much plaudits to Van Dijk, you actually forget how good Gomez was. But in many games, he was actually the better defender. Right, but it's. I'm not really concerned about what that back 4 pairing is. It's going to be Robbo, Van Dijk, probably Gomez. But I also think it's going to be Gomez because it's better recovery pace. I don't necessarily think there's that much of aerial prowess between the Everton front line. That is going to give both of them a trouble. Like Calvert-Lewin and Van Dijk, and invariably we know who wins that battle. The back 4 stays the same. I'm not. I can't gloss over that. I'm going to be worried about Adrian, because he's made these mistakes multiple number of times, right? So you can argue that if the first mistake doesn't happen against Villa, there is an opportunity for something else to happen, right? But he did that twice against Atletico. He's done that. It's weird. Adrian between the Premier League versus Adrian in the Cups is like 2 whole different human beings, right? You saw the Cup game. He was brilliant against Arsenal with, shot stopping, etc. He goes into the Premier League and then there's a whole, it's like we have 2 Jordan Pickfords on the same pitch. Right, I think midfield will still go. Fabinho. If Hendo's fit, then obviously I think that's likely. But it'll be Gini, Hendo, and Thiago or Fabinho. I think that will depend on who's got the most minutes in the internationals. And then the front 3 for me stays the same. Like that's not going to change if all 3 of them are fit. And I know everyone's giving Bobby a lot of shit because he is technically a striker, right, and therefore has to have numbers as a striker, but he's been off. He knows he's been off. Everyone knows he's been off. But he is the reason why that system works the way it does. But now I'm also not worried because you've got, Taki on the bench and you've got Diego Jota. So if there are, changes that need to be made, they need to be made. And let's not, Coleman's on his last legs pretty much. Decent defender, but obviously last legs. And I think Digne has also got a knock. So you're always going to have that battle. So I'm not really worried. I don't think it's going to be a smashing, but that's more because the numbers under everyone's legs, minutes-wise. But I still think it's going to be naturally, I do think it's going to be a Liverpool victory.
Fair enough. Nidhi, though, he covered 2 of the questions I was going to ask you. Keita, again, the big missing picture, and I bring up Keita only because Kern, you and Sriram had this heavy debate in our season preview. I'm going to touch upon Keita and what his role is going to be in the squad, not just in maybe featuring in this game, Nidhi, but maybe going ahead with the likes of, Thiago fit and in your squad. And secondly, is there enough merit. Bijon says that, leave the front three untouched. Bobby plays a certain role, which fair enough. There is merit to say that the way the squad gels, it's understandable. But let's say hypothetically, if you were to drop Bobby because he picks up an injury, who comes in looking at Jota, who's in great form, versus Minamino? Sorry.
Look, now talking about your first question first, which is who plays in the midfield, and I think it goes back to the situation with the keeper. With Allison, we build from the back, right? So you could play Keita there because Keita is someone who can play that fantastic pass, or he can run with the ball, or he can score that goal. With Adrian, though, we need a slightly more defensive-minded player in the midfield. That's my opinion anyway. And for that reason, I think Fabinho starts because he's a better ball carrier than Keita. I don't think Thiago is going to get dropped for this game. We absolutely need Thiago for this particular game purely because of his passing range. I know it was just half a game, but in a game like this, I don't think you drop a player like Thiago, especially when he's available. And as Bijon said, I think if Hendo is fit, Hendo starts. And that's purely because of how we need to build up to this game. These three, I think, based on their defensive abilities, and with that I talk about Fabinho, but also in terms of ball carrying capacity, I think Thiago and Henderson are slightly better. Milner can probably come in as a substitute later on in the game, like I said about Matip, who can freshen up the. Now talking about the front three, hypothetically, if you think if Bobby, if you need to drop Bobby for this game, and first of all, I'm a huge Bobby Firmino fan. I have defended Bobby so many times everywhere. I still think it's just it's one of those times where he's just not hitting those goals.
No,
he's still doing a lot.
Nidhi, I don't think you defend him at all. Never.
No, I'm a huge Bobby Firmino fan, but I still think he needs some time off the starting 11, maybe a couple of games. And if that may be the case, the way I see it, I would play Salah, in the center. He's played that role before. He's done well in that role before. Mane was a right winger. He can do a job he can do much more than a job on the right side. Jota is, like you said, is in form. He can play on the left. And that's how I would do it. Personally, if you ask my personal opinion, I would not drop Bobby. But if he does get dropped, I do see a reason for that. And I think in the long run, it would do, Bobby a whole world of good, actually.
I know. I'm just going to go back to something that Bijon said earlier, which was the Dominic Calvert-Lewin versus Van Dijk battle. He was like very confident as to who he was going to pick. He didn't name it, but obviously he thinks Van Dijk is going to steamroll that competition. But I think, just seeing that for the first time in probably 3 years, the Liverpool back four do look attackable. I think someone will enter this game after 4 years being like, what, we can get at these players. Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't as feared as he was, a few weeks ago, probably, or last season, right? And that's probably shown in all our FPL teams. Suddenly, he's not a must-have in every draft, right? Like, there's a sort of thing that's sort of coming out from Liverpool defense right now. So honestly, see, even though if, say, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and has his hands full with Van Dijk, for example, I think because of the second centre-back and because of how now James and Richarlison play around him, I think with those fullbacks and the second centre-back, I think this game is going to be sort of very much attackable for Everton. I mean, if you've, Bijon wanted to move on from this, but it would be very amiss of me to not bring it up again. Liverpool did concede 7 in their last game. So, I think they will, somewhere in the head, there might be something in the players, okay, what, let's not repeat this. And if Everton can, suppose in the first 15 minutes, give them a couple of scares, that thought does come back to you as a player, no matter what manager drills in. It sort of comes in, hey, could this maybe happen again? Okay, both of them are chomping at me now. So let's
they both want to say something. I think, what, Kern, why don't both of y'all first, start off with Bijon and then Nidhi. Give us your key player battle and your prediction for the game, and then we'll close after that, right? So Bijon, go first, and then Nidhi after.
Yes, I think one will be Richarlison and Trent, right? Because again, it's just there's enough occupying that happens in that section. Um, and given that, that's another reason why. I mean, we can touch upon this later about what Keita's role is, and I think that's going to be the tricky part of it. The other one that I do find very interesting is going to be. I'm going to club this because I assume Genie is going to start. I think it's going to be Gini, Robbo, and James. And the reason why I say that is because that little section is James is not going to stick to the lines, right? So Robbo doesn't have to do more major direct defending. It's going to be in that half space, right? And in that half space is going to largely depend on who that midfielder is, right? So if it's Fabinho, it's going to be a DM, right? But I still feel like it's going to be the next runner, be that Thiago or Gini. And I think that's going to be a really tricky thing. And I think on the other side, I think for both teams, it's going to be a very shoot on sight opportunity, right? Because it's just we've as much as we complain about Adrian, and he's had obviously his own issues, but on the other side, let's not forget that there's also Jordan Pickford. And the last derby that we won, Origi's partially a legend because of what Pickford gifted to us. Let's be absolutely real about that. So that is, I think those are the key battles. I do think it's going to be like I think we will concede, and that's made just a function of Adrian, because I think there's zero confidence from that the team has in him as a goalkeeper. It's very tricky, right? Because there's multiple things that don't go well between him passing out from the back, or even as a shot stopper, unless it's a penalty. There's these kind of things that are always going to be an issue. I think those two are going to be really tricky battles. And I'm not even going to talk about, let's say, Liverpool's front three and their defense, because I think Liverpool's front three against most defenses are going to be, not a given, but it's going to be enough of a battle for Liverpool to sort of.
Fair.
But I still think it's going to be one of those 2-1s and maybe pinch a third. But I still think it's going to be a 2-1 is what I'm going to go for.
Nidhi?
Well, the battle, I think it's Adrian versus his own mind, honestly. No. What I meant by that is, this game, I think it's down to a lot of how you respond. And, for both teams, actually, Liverpool are coming off, their heaviest defeat in 57 years. This has not been done to Liverpool, even when, we had, the so-called banter era that we had. Even then, we didn't, concede 7, but it has happened, now when we've won, the Premier League and the Champions League. So, I think it's down to how players react, and that's why I think I have slightly more faith in us, because we've been through this. We've lost in Kiev and we went out and won in Madrid. We lost. We got 97 points and still didn't win the league. We've been through setbacks, major ones, and we've come back. So predictions, I don't want to do one because I'm a little superstitious that way. But I think in terms of player battles, I think I agree with Bijon. I think Richarlison versus the left side, the right side, Trent is going to be a big one.
I think for me, the player battle, that's I think the interesting thing here, and we try not to make a lot of it because they're elite players, but as Bijon said, like minutes under the legs is a big thing right now. And I think Liverpool wins that battle for me because Salah hasn't gone off for international duty. Mane has been back, whereas James Rodriguez is playing till I think late Thursday morning. He flies in after that from a completely different time zone and sort of early Saturday kickoff. So I think that's going to be the factor where I think Liverpool sort of have the edge in this battle, because James is a key player for them.
And let's not forget, this is COVID season. We still have one more day to go. So, let's hang on. I'm scared about tomorrow, the medical reports for the team. Yeah. So let's hang on.
And obviously those things will change. But I think with what we know as of now, Liverpool sort of have the better in the legs department. But I'm just going to go for an Everton 2-1 win here, because one have to be devil's advocate, right, in the Liverpool episode. Otherwise, it's not me. And just generally, finally, they have something to fight for rather than just bring down Liverpool. and they're on a high. Probably the only time where Liverpool are feeling something. So I think Everton 2-1 for me.
Fair enough, guys. I'm going to quickly wrap this up. I'm saying it's a 2-2, very fiery game. I see goals always. No red cards in this one, though, surprisingly, but a very feisty encounter nonetheless. For me, the winner, if there is a winner in this game, either it's going to be the one in midfield, right? Either it's Thiago or Fabinho who win the battle, or it's going to be Alan and Doucouré. So that for me is the key battle in the game. The person who wins that might get that 3-2 win. But thank you so much, Bijon and Nidhi, for joining us. We had a great conversation for the Merseyside Derby preview. Kern, thank you for joining us from Chicago as well. Our in-house Fundit. Hit like on our video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Turn your notifications on. We'll also be having a post video. Yes, our social media handles are all over the place already, so don't worry about that. And we will be back for a review of our Merseyside Derby. So we'll see you then. Cheers, guys.